Well, hello everybody. Hello. Welcome back to Leaders Lab. Welcome. Hope you're having a good start to the week. I am too. Finally, just an update to all of you in our church who've been waiting for the update. I can finally report I finally got the lease back from the owner's lawyers, so we should be good to go. I haven't had a chance to review it. I got emailed just before I jumped on here, so I'll be taking a look through that as soon as we get done on tonight. But that's good news. So thanks be to the Lord for that. So that's good news for us as a church. Good news for me personally. So I feel like we're making progress. And so again, as I normally do, take a look at who's in the chat. And I'm realizing we are no longer going to be live for Leaders Lab on every second Tuesday. We'll continue doing Leaders Lab, but we will no longer be going live. For a number of reasons. It's so much better to do something like Leaders Lab in person. We're not able to fully connect the way I wanted to connect at Leaders Lab around this. So we will still have the content going up every Tuesday night on YouTube, but we'll try to find a space where we can either engage with it in an in-person kind of format. But yeah, it's just there's a lot of effort goes into going live. And I want it to feel the way I want it to feel. In fact, even Kristen said it the other day. She's like, oh, I wish it could feel more conversational. I feel like we get into this more. Because when we talk Leaders Lab, again, the last thing I want this thing to feel like is I'm teaching and giving us and talking to us about leadership as if I've got it all figured out or mastered it. This whole heart behind this was that we would have discussion and tackle ideas and subject matter that can really kind of drive us all forward. In all areas of leadership, not just the teams we lead, but in our own personal lives, in our careers, in the different spaces. So just wanted to give you that heads up. That's where we're headed. So we can still jump on every second Tuesday at 7 p.m. And we can still engage as much as we can in the chat. But I'm going to try and create a space we can gather together in person and figure out how to make this a little more collaborative. And maybe even look at different ways to get other people involved in these conversations, because I do want it to be a conversation. But I'm glad you're here. For those of you who are here, let me know who is here. I know Lonnie has said he's here, jumping online from the chat. Kristen obviously is watching online on the chat. She's never in the same room as me, so I'm always feeling like I'm alone. Woe is me. Somebody come help me, deliver me from my loneliness. She's like, stop being a victim. But let me know who's here, who's watching along tonight, and we will get right into it. It's a shorter thought today. But hopefully one that I think will still be pretty encouraging to us and challenging and allow us to continue to growing. So I want to talk to us today around a thought titled "The Small Things That Change Everything." The small things that change everything. That's the subject matter. That's the thought today. The small things that change everything. This thought is from a guy named Sir Dave Brailsford. He, a couple years ago, was I think they call him the performance director. He was the performance director for British cycling. And he came up with this concept called the 1% theory. Really talking about that he discovered that most teams lose not because of a lack of vision, a lack of talent, or having a game plan, but because of a lack of precision. What he calls the fine margins. Because when you start to get to really those high level of performing, you find that everyone knows the basics. Everyone knows their role. Everyone knows what to do. Everyone knows the game plan. Everyone's highly talented. So the difference often comes down to those fine margins. In fact, as I thought about it too, I had thought about this idea that it's very rarely the big things that derail us. It's the inches we ignore, the details we overlook, or the 1% we leave on the table. That's often the thing that can cost you hitting your goals, that can cost you, when we talk in the context of faith, becoming who you feel like God's called you to be, in the teams we lead, when it comes to our families. And really, when you start to think about leadership, your personal leadership in every area of your life, it's the inches we ignore, the details we overlook, or the 1% we leave on the table. In fact, if we're thinking about operating at the highest level, whether that's us as individuals, or teams we're on, or teams we lead, or the church that we're a part of, when we think about the highest level, you start to realize that the difference between winning and losing, or achieving your goals and not, it often comes down to that 1%. That 1% theory that Dave Brailsford talks about. Or another way to talk about it is the aggregation of marginal gains theory. Shut up, Lonnie's like it works for Manchester United now. Yeah, we'll see. We'll see if Manchester United can finally win 5 games in a row, which hasn't happened in the Lord knows how long. So easy. But really, it's an aggregation of marginal gains theory. So Dave Brailsford essentially puts like this, that the whole principle, he discovered it as, again, he was the director of performance at the British Cycling Academy. He found that if you broke down everything you could think of that goes into riding a bike, so you're talking about high performance cycling, if you break down everything you can think of that goes into riding a bike, and you improved all those details by 1%, you will get a significant increase when you put it all back together. So think on that. If you look at the pedaling mechanism, like what's the size of the pedal? If you look at the tire pressure, so if you tear apart you look at the tire, what's the tire pressure? What's the tread on the tires? How do those spokes work around the wheel? The gear mechanism. So if we looked at that, just the gear mechanism as well, and you look at how fast are you able to get through the gears? How quickly can you change up and down gears? You look at the seat height. In fact, that was one of the biggest changes that allowed cyclists to perform at a higher level and cut down time on the second, was just something as simple as changing the seat height, the seat shape. Looking at the braking mechanism. Looking at how the steering, not the steering wheel, the handlebars work. Looking at what the clothing they wear. Looking at the size and the shape of the helmet. Looking at even something as basic as even things like drag, how they work together as a team. If you break down every little bit and you go, how do we improve the seat by 1%? How do we improve the wheels by 1%? How do we improve the handlebars by 1%? How do we improve? If you look at all that and you break it all down and you improve everything by 1% and you put it all back together, he found that you can significantly increase the output when you put it all together. And in fact, this theory, this 1% theory, then drastically made its way across the entirety of all sports. If you look at F1, Formula One, some of the fastest cars in the world, racing around the circuits around the world, McLaren, which is one of those competitors, companies that has a driver in the race and cars in the race, that McLaren F1, they coined their own term. They didn't just call it the 1%. For them, it was called the tense theory. Their whole idea was that their entire team will become galvanized. Their entire culture as a racing organization will be galvanized around the idea that if they can shave tenths of a second, 1/10 of a second, a split second off of every lap time. Now, you got to realize in Formula One, there are on average about 60 laps. Some races are 48 laps that are longer per lap. Some go up to about 78 laps. But they've figured about 60 laps on average per race. If they can figure out how to shave 1/10, think about that, 1 split second per lap. They discovered that it's that split second that they could steal every lap that ends up winning them the race by 2 to 4 seconds. When you realize how small, when I talk about the fine margins, in Formula One, if you know anything about Formula One racing, you realize that oftentimes the winner only wins by a margin of 2 to 4 seconds, which is accumulated over 60 laps, stealing or getting better by 1/10 of a second every single lap. And so it's crazy. So in fact, what's really cool is that now all F1 teams started doing that over the course of the years. But what's interesting about McLaren didn't just insert this into some of their practices. They made it central to their operating principles, their operating culture. And what's interesting is that for a long time, Ferrari was the leader in terms of Formula One racing. And that's because they had a 16-year head start on McLaren. For 16 years, Ferrari had been doing Formula One racing before McLaren got into the scene, which Ferrari is Italian and McLaren is English. And so McLaren was a long way behind in terms of engine capacity, in terms of driver skill set, in terms of build out of the car. So McLaren realized that we are so far behind catching Ferrari, who were miles apart ahead of everybody else. They realized that we have to get a competitive advantage on becoming the team that knows how to win the tenths in every lap. And they built this into their whole theory. And now in 2025, McLaren has almost caught up to Ferrari in terms of success. And in 2025, McLaren is now put as the top racing company across the world, has a greater valuation, has a greater future than Ferrari does, and have now begun racking up more championships and winning more. All because they realized that at the highest level, the difference between winning and losing is the fine margins, the 1%. I promise I'm going to circle this back to ministry and to different leadership, but I want to just lay the groundwork by showing this all. It's understanding that this is not just a singular look or focus, just at the technical gains, but it's a comprehensive approach that looks at marginal gains across technical, physical, practical, operational, and even psychological aspects of everything we do. In fact, one of my favorite movies, one of my favorites, I think some of you have seen it before, it's called Any Given Sunday. Let me know in the chat if you've watched this movie before. It's a great movie, NFL movie, and there is a speech that's given towards the end of that movie by Al Pacino, his character in the movie, that will go down as probably the best and greatest sports speech, a halftime speech ever given by a coach in history. In fact, funny point is when I grew up playing rugby, I used to listen to that speech every time I used to go out into the field before I used to go. It's the most inspiring speech. So I want to read it to you because he employs some of these tactics, some of this ideology on the 1% theory into his talk. In football, so in cycling it was 1% theory, in McLaren it was the tenths theory. In football, he calls it the game of inches. So here's the speech, I want to read it to you. I can't deliver it like he did, but hopefully it speaks to you like it spoke to me and you get the point. He goes this, he says it seems like you find out that life like football is just a game of inches. Because in either game, life or football, the margin for error is so small. 1/2 step too early or too late and you don't quite make it. Half step, too early or too late and you don't quite make it. 1/2 second too slow or too fast and you don't catch it. The inches we need are everywhere around us. They're in every break of the game, every minute, every second. And he goes on to say this, in this team, we fight for that inch. On this team, we tear ourselves apart and everyone around us to pieces for that inch. Because we know when we add up all those inches in every second of the game, that's going to make the difference between winning and losing, between living and dying. He's essentially echoing the same principles that Sir Dave Brazeley talked about, that McLaren employed, that really at this high level, it's a game of inches. It's getting the details, the fine margin right. Because when you put all those things together, you can significantly increase your output. Graham Henry, talking about rugby. I love rugby. Sorry, I know you're an All-American and whatever. I'm going to talk about the ideas that make sense to me. But this is applicable because Graham Henry is the most successful coach in all of history in any sport. American football, baseball, swimming, Formula One, cricket, whatever you name it, basketball. Any coach in history in any sport, Sir Graham Henry sits at the top of that list, which is why I'm talking about him. He was the coach of the New Zealand rugby national team, called the All Blacks. And he employed this exact same strategy into the culture of that team, and that's how they became the highest performing team in history of all sports. Here's what he said. We learned in our organization, we talked about creating a learning environment. Everyone getting better and everyone getting bigger every day. So if each player improves by 5% minimum, 10% or even 15%, then we recognize that the whole team is going to improve. If you put these collective percentages together, you've got something pretty special. And I think he was bang on. In English football, which Lonnie has already started quoting about Manchester United, which no one cares about, Arsenal is the only way to go. We're an Arsenal church, we're not a Man United church. In English football, it's the 50-50 balls. It's the aerial duels. It's the half turn. It's being able to scan the pitch so you don't drop half a second on the turn or miss a duel. In basketball, coming back to home territory for all you Americans, in basketball, it's the split second. It's the split-second decision-making that drives shooting efficiency. It's free throws in basketball. It's the turnovers and the rebounds that are the fine margins. In the 100-meter sprint, it's your takeoff. Here's what's crazy as I look at this. It's your takeoff. That first second can often determine if you are winning or losing. It's crazy that first second, that takeoff is one of the most important parts of the 100-meter sprint. I hope you understand the point here is that everyone often has the big stuff down. And this is also true of our walk of faith. We can often have the big stuff down. Everyone knows the techniques. Everyone knows the tactics. But what's going to be the difference between us getting there or not is not going to come down to the plan. It often comes down to the people that make up the plan. People who are willing to put in the hard yards and fight for that 1%. And here's the truth about the 1%. And this is true even in walk of faith. It's never the sexy stuff. There, I said it. If you want to be the kind of person who fights for the fine margins in life, who fights to become the very best version of ourselves, or even as a team collectively, we're going to fight to become the best, we have to fight for that 1%. And the truth about the 1%, which is why not many people do it, it's never the sexy stuff. Let me show you this in the Formula One analogy. Often people think it's just about the driver. If we can get the driver to drive better, if we can get the driver performing better, we can win. The reality is, oftentimes, winning in a Formula One race doesn't just come down to the driver. It comes down to how fast the crew who change out tires, who put the nuts and bolts in, can do it quickly for you. You can lose a race. You can lose a Formula One race solely on how quickly your crew team can change out the tires in that crew change. So when it comes to Formula One, it's not the sexy stuff. It's the nuts. It's the bolts. It's studying the angles of entry and exit as the driver. It's how fast you can get those bolts on and off. In fact, they have begun to innovate so rapidly in Formula One, the mechanisms that they use to change the nuts and bolts on a tire, because they've found, okay, we can focus on getting this 1 split second faster. Every time we do this, that accumulates, as well as the team who change the tires, as well as the team who refill the engines and who refill the fuel. Every person on that team, including the driver, has to play the part in improving by 1%. In basketball, to show you that it's not the sexy stuff, it's the free throws, it's the rebounds, and it's the suicides up and down the court, getting better at your transitions. Why? Why suicides? That running up and down. Have you ever done any basketball training? That was one of the worst things, because what they found is that turnovers in basketball, which are the biggest margin of winning and losing in a team, comes down to how quickly and how well you can do transitions. When you're tired in transition is when you often turn over the ball. So they'll work on going up and down the court, working on transitions to reduce turnovers. It's sitting and doing jumping up and down, getting your boards, getting your rebounds, because that's a fine margin so you can win, you lose the game. Free throws. It's not sexy to sit at training, after training, and sit and do 300 free throws just to get it down pat, because a game can be won and lost by doing your free throws. It's never the sexy stuff. In sprinting, it's the takeoff mechanics. They'll work for hours and hours and hours on how you position a takeoff and that first split second. You'll never, very rarely, when athletes for 100-meter sprint are training, will they just do 100 meters over and over again. What are they working on? The fine margins. How fast can I get off the track? They're looking at aerodynamics. How low? How high? How many strides? So it's never the sexy stuff, but that is how you win the margins on the 100, of the 1%. In fact, here's a thought that I want to put together in front of you of this, is that it's 100 things done 1% better that deliver cumulative competitive advantage. 100 things done 1% better. That's how we become a high-performing team or a high-performing leader in an organization. So to bring it back to us, what's your 1%? That's really the point I wanted to get here today. The small things that change everything. What is your 1%? What's the inch? What's the tenth? What's the edge that you're fighting for when it comes to your life? So let's talk about your life. Just think about your financial position. Think about your relationships. Think about your marriage. Think about your career. Think about our personal development. Think about how you parent your children. Think about the home you've built. Think about your own disciplines in your own life. Think about your walk with God. What's the 1% in all those things that you are going to fight for to give you the competitive advantage, to allow you to win, to allow you to achieve your goals, to allow you to become the best version of yourself? So let's look at your financial position. Sometimes the 1%, it's not sexy, but look at your budget. I'm always shocked at the number of people who just don't have a budget, who have no clue what they want to do, how much is coming in, how much is going out, where they want to spend what's coming in, how they want to use what's coming out. The 1% is a budget. The 1% is setting up an app or setting up a tracker to help you with, notify you when you're spending. I heard even this trick, for one person, the 1% was, I'm going to stop using my card. So why? Because you don't feel the pinch as much when you just swipe. You just tap. Oh, it's so easy. Just tap, tap. When you tap, you don't actually associate that money is leaving your account or money is leaving your hands. So he's like, I started making it hard for me. The 1% for him was, I'm going to withdraw cash and I'm going to pay for everything, groceries, gas, in cash. Why? Because then I see the weight. I can see the cost of getting that. I can actually see the money leaving me. And he goes, that 1% change made me realize, oh, I'm spending too recklessly when I tap. Now he's second guessed every time. When you have to drop a $100 bill, it feels a whole lot different than having to tap for $100. So that was him. When it comes to relationships, what's the 1% for you that you're fighting for? How do I get 1% better? Is it perhaps that I consider how quickly I respond to text messages? Am I often asking more for my friendships than I am giving to my relationships? Am I showing up for my friends or am I not? How often do I call? Am I actually a good friend? Am I actually a good spouse? When you think about your career, what are you doing to better yourself in your career? We've done the hard yards. We've done the study. We've done the research. We've done the working your way to get there. So now it's like, well, everyone else in the workplace has the same degree you have. Sometimes have the same work experience you have. So what's going to separate you to get you promoted, to separate you to get you what you want to in your career? What's that 1%? Are you willing to put in that extra hard yards on the things that aren't sexy to get you that defined margins to get you the competitive edge? I mean, I can go through all of these things, your own personal development, your own disciplines. What's the 1%? Am I waking up a little bit earlier to get myself a little bit more time, a little bit more margin when it comes to my preparation for the day or my preparation for what I've got at hand? What's the 1%? What is your 1%? What is your inch? What is your tenth? What is the edge you're fighting for when it comes to your life? Let's dive into your job. What's the thing you're fighting for when it comes to your job? I've often thought about this and I've often said this. The 1%, I think, when it comes to your job or wherever you find yourself, wherever you're employed, especially in the context of being a great witness to God at work in your lives, I've always said this, be more valuable than your paycheck. Are you more valuable than your paycheck? Yes, Kristen, I am telling you to wake up earlier. That's your 1% here at home. But truthfully, at your job, at your workplace, are you more valuable than your paycheck? And if you're not, then figure out what the things that you need to change and what you need to work on to become just a little more valuable than your paycheck. Here's another one, and this works hand in hand. Rise to the level that you want to be and not settle for where you are now. The amount of people who complain about where they are. I'm bigger than my job. I'm better than where I'm currently at. I want to be there, but my boss doesn't recognize me there. And what often happens is we can settle to the level of where we are. We perform sufficiently to match where we are. And we wonder why we never get moved up. You've not demonstrated an ability to perform at the level of where you want to be at. If you want to prove to your employer, if you want to prove to your spouse, you want to prove to yourself that you can operate and run with the big dogs, then you've got to operate at the same level as the big dogs, even though you're being paid or positioned in a lower place. I will never promote you or move you, or you'll never be moved, or you'll never be promoted to a higher level if you've not shown an ability to perform at a high level. So I say this to us again. Part of being more valuable than your paycheck is operating at the level you want to be recognized at or want to be paid at, not just where you are right now. Another thought when it comes to our jobs, the 1% is be easy to follow and easier to lead. That's a simple change. Imagine what it would be like to work with you if you were somebody who was easy to follow and even easier to lead. These are all little 1% things that we can think about, that we can incorporate into how we do what we do as leaders in our jobs. Here's another one. Master your craft. Many of us are very good at something, but very few of us have mastered anything. And to become a master at something is to I think the theory is you have to put in 1,000 hours worth of work, 1,000 hours into something to become a master at it. In fact, even to come back to think, I don't know if he's watching this, if he isn't, but even this thought, someone like BJ, you might be an assistant coach right now, or you might be second to somebody, but operate at the level as though you are the head coach. Operate as if everything rode on you, and watch as you elevate and people around you elevate. I just felt to say that. But yeah, master your craft. What is it that you do? What is it you're gifted to do? What is it you're called to do? And master it. Again, it's like, and I think that's part of being a good steward. This whole idea of the 1%, and especially in the ministry context or in a faith context or following our calling context, it really comes down to being a good steward. Being a good steward is looking at everything I have and going, am I doing the very best I can with everything I have? And we cannot say we're doing our very best with what we've been given if we neglect the fine margins, if we neglect the 1%, if we neglect the 10th of an advantage. Here's the last thing too. Now as I bring it home, because again, Leaders Lab is about our church. What's your 1%? What's the inch, the 10th, the edge that you're fighting for when it comes to the part you play on our team? And here's some things I wanted to think about. I think the 1% is moving from being a spectator to a contributor. I think it's very easy to sit on the sidelines and watch us and go, I'll kind of sit here and watch as things get moving and I'll be around, but I'm not going to give it myself. But I think some 1% is moving from being a spectator to a contributor. And no matter how big that contribution is, just 1%. I tell you, our church would be a whole lot better if everyone was a spectator and moved that 1% closer to being a contributor. Just 1%. Because the cumulative impact of everyone's 1% growth will make us significantly better as a team. Another way is to move from being a pundit to a player. A pundit to a player. I think here's what you find, especially in sports, which I think is true of life. Everyone loves to have something to say. Everyone loves to comment. Everyone loves to contribute their thoughts, to be a pundit. All of a sudden, an expert in that. Well, I think we should be doing that. I think you should be doing that. But very few people actually have laced up their boots, pulled up their socks, and got skin in the game. And I think the 1% for some of us is to go, I'm going to move from being a pundit, somebody who has something to say about everything and who has an opinion on everything, to actually putting skin in the game and going, I'm going to do that. Or I'm going to become a player and I'm going to now put skin in the game, that then my words hold more weight because I'm actually part of the team. It's very few people have time for pundits, especially when you're in the thick of it. So 1% is going, how do I move from being a pundit to becoming a player? Another thing is, for some people, 1% is going from being a volunteer, which we have so many great volunteers in our church, to becoming a leader. What's the 1% you can take to allow you to move to becoming a leader instead of just a great volunteer? What's the 1% for you to get better at what you do? That's another thought. How do I get better? I mean, just that thought alone. I just thought about it now. Just that thought alone. How do I get better? For some of us, the 1% is to stop putting all the ownership and putting all the importance and putting all the weight on somebody else making me better, to going, what if I disempowered everybody else and empowered myself to becoming the person I want to be? And so even just to switch our thinking, to stop going, when will so-and-so invest into me in this way so I can become this kind of person, to what can I do to get better? And I challenge Kristen and myself on this a lot. It's going, what have I done to make myself better? Who am I going to? Instead of sitting and feeling sorry for myself, why not start to write a list of going, who do I want to learn from? And start taking a proactive approach and going, I'm going to approach that person, or I'm going to read that book, or I'm going to listen to that podcast, or I'm going to take that course, or I'm going to work at that thing to get better. I'm no longer going to outsource my growth. I'm going to take ownership and responsibility for getting better at my walk with the Lord, at my gifting and my talents, at my career. And what's interesting to me, I've often found, is it's a lot easier, and oftentimes the doors open to people wanting to invest into you when they can see that you're willing to invest into yourself. Oftentimes we are the hindrance to the very thing we're waiting for. We're waiting for somebody else to believe in us. We're waiting for somebody else to invest into us. We're waiting for somebody else to pour a resource into us. But as any good investor will tell you, very few investors will ever invest in a company or somebody who hasn't first invested into themselves or shown that they've got their own skin in the game. So ask yourself the question, how can I be better? How can I get bigger? Bigger in spirit, bigger in capacity, bigger in thinking, bigger in spirit, all these things. The 1%, how do I, there's so many things we can look at here. But that's the thing for us is, what are the small changes we can make in our lives? Because again, so many of us don't make changes because we're looking for the opportunity for the big seismic leap kind of change. But it's very few times, especially the higher performance you get, is it going to be the big thing. It's often the small things that change everything. So what are the small things in your life that you can change that will, again, have an impact on everything? When I think about our church and faith, even this afternoon, God rarely asks us for major leaps. Very rarely does God ask us for major seismic leaps. But what I found is that God often leads us step by step. Step by step. That 1%, that next step, that next thing you can do. It's never the seismic shift, it's just step by step. Faithfulness in inches always precedes fruitfulness in miles. Say it again. Faithfulness in inches often always precedes fruitfulness in miles. What's that old saying? You can't get to 100 without a penny. You can't get miles of fruitfulness if you don't begin with faithfulness in inches. The same principle that wins races builds churches. That's what I'm talking about this today in the context of our church. The same principle that wins races builds churches. Small, consistent, compounding obedience. Say it again. Small, consistent, compounding obedience. Stop being paralyzed because you can't take the big leap. Stop being paralyzed because you can't do everything you want to do at one time. I'm so guilty of this sometimes. In fact, I used to be, not anymore. I used to wait till I could do everything I wanted to do before I took the first step. And what I found is oftentimes that leaves you more paralyzed and leaves you never actually taking that step, because the reality is there are some things that you can't take. You can't take all in one big bite. Some things are meant to be taken in bite-sized chunks, one at a time, one thing at a time. And we're finding that even right now in our church. I've been paralyzed for so long, even with this renovation plan for our church, thinking through, man, I don't want to start. I don't want to do this until everything's done. But the reality is we're going to have to, there's some things we're going to have to stagger. There's some things we're going to have to do bit by bit. I was encouraged, even talking to BJ and Baze over the weekend. They got a home recently, a couple of months ago, and it's been a few months, and they've just now finished their basement. And I'm going, oh my gosh, but they've been living in it, hosting in it, and going, that was encouraged me. And I was a small thing, it was encouragement to go, you don't have to wait for anything to be perfect before you can actually start living in it and moving forward. And so same thing with our church. We're going to take things in bite-sized chunks. It might not be exactly what we want it to look like right now, but doing something is always better than doing nothing. And taking that first step often unlocks the next step rather than staying paralyzed over the thing that you can't do. So in churches, again, when I talk about this 1% theory, contextually for us, so much can often be made of the platform. When we think the church, when we think ministry, so much can be made about the platform. We think that the growth or the forward momentum of our church has to come from the platform. But what I've learned is that the greatest marginal gains are not platform activities. The things that actually move us forward are not the things that happen on the platform. They're not the biggest marginal gains. Where are the greatest marginal gains for our church? Where are the greatest marginal gains for our ministry? Well, I'll tell you where they are. They're in the parking lot. They're at the front door. They're in our lobbies. They're in our systems and processes. They're in our messaging. They're in our culture. They're in the outworking of our mission, the relationships and partnerships we build. There are so many things that we can look at the 1% of improvement of those that will move our church forward in a much better way and make us stronger as a team and output in a greater capacity as a team than if we just looked at the platform. And so again, and I say that because I've been in ministry now for a while, and I can tell you that you can often win or lose a family or win or lose a person in the parking lot. In fact, as we get into this new structure and new building and revisiting some of our teams, we're no longer calling the team that helps with building a new team in terms of parking lot. That's our first impressions team. That's the team. It's no longer a parking team or the car park team or whatever it is. It's the first impressions team. That's what it is. We can often lose or win a soul, or win or lose a family, just in their experience in finding a parking space, in how they're greeted and welcomed at the very front of our doors. Then the front door. What's the first face that greets me? Do we make eye contact? Do we smile at people? What's the entry? What's that first experience? That is, again, all of that. Parking lot experience, the person who greets me there, the front door, someone who meets me there. They are all beginning to form someone's opinion about our church, someone's opinion about the gospel, someone's opinion about God, someone's opinion about our faith. Can you see that long before somebody even hears the first song of worship, or is greeted by the MC on a platform, or hears the word preached by whoever's preaching the word, already we are sending a message that will either help someone get closer to salvation or closer to forming part of our faith community, or making that harder. The lobby, what does that feel like for somebody? Can we get 1% better in our lobby experiences? Can we ensure that from the moment someone steps through past our first impressions team, past our front door welcome team, and into our lobbies, how do we get 1 split second better? 1 second better at noticing someone who's walking through our door, not just a new person, but the person who's been coming for years or months, but 1 second faster at noticing them and engaging with them. That they know, oh, this is a safe place. This is a place where I'm welcomed, where I belong, where I'm recognized and I'm seen. We live in such a lonely world, and people feel like they just go through life unseen, unrecognized, unvalued. How powerful a testimony and how significant a step does that take in somebody going, I found the right experience. You say welcome home, but I felt welcome home. That they recognize that the kingdom of God is a whosoever will kind of place. I felt that because I got out my car and someone greeted me. I walked to the front doors and I felt at home. I was in the lobby and I didn't feel like I felt awkward. No, someone greeted me and was right there. The lobby. Our systems and processes. How fast, how easy is it for somebody to check in a child? How comfortable are we? How quick are we at making a new family or a long-standing family feel comfortable by leaving their child in our kids ministry? How quickly can we get a kid going from shy to out of their shell, from nervous to joyful, which puts at ease a parent? All that, there's ease, there's everything. Can you start to see how all those things, like Sir Dave Brazy talks about, stripping back a bicycle into all of its individual parts and then figure out how to improve each part by 1%, and you put it all back together, we now have a significantly better product. I think the same thing applies to our church and how we lead our teams and how we do what we do. We have to break apart everything, not just the preaching, not just the worship experience, not just the flow of service, but every detail that makes up our weekend services. We have to get better at breaking that apart. And think about the area that you're in. Think about the thing that you lead. Think about the area that you volunteer in. Think about what you bring to our church. And think about, how can I take what I'm part of, how can I take the part that I play and increase that by 1%? So if I'm on kids team, if I'm on lobby team, if I'm on a hosting team, if I'm on a first impressions team, if I'm on production team, if I'm on the marketing and communications team, if I'm on the events team, if I'm on the whatever, the people experience, whatever it is, think about, how do I get this thing 1% better? And here's a few things I wanted to just touch on before I land this plane, is when I just, again, begin to write some things. And I found oftentimes in church, in our church, or just church in general, in ministry, unlike the sports world, where the 1% is often tangible things. You can see a free throw. You can do a free throw. You can change a nut and bolt faster or slower. I found that in ministry, especially when working with people, it's often the intangibles, the things that you can't see, that have the biggest impact. And so these are some of the intangibles, the things that are not often seen, but their impact is felt, that can move the needle. These are some of the small things that I think can change everything when it comes to our team, when it comes to our church and our culture. And here's just a few of them. Our outlook. Number one is our outlook. How do we change by 1% in our outlook? How do we see our church? How do we think about our church? How do you see the place, the part that you play? How do we think about the part that we play? How do we approach it? How do we, think about it. Do I come with negative thoughts about what I'm doing? Do I come with small thoughts around what I'm entrusted with? Do I, when I think outlook, I'm thinking like the mental state, or my perception of something. Is it just a chore? Is it just ticking a box? Am I just going through the motions? Is it just a stepping stone? Is it something I do begrudgingly, or is it something I do to the best of my ability to be a good steward? What is the 1% shift we can make in our outlook that could produce something very different in us? Again, coming back to what we've been talking about on Wednesdays in the Word, it's often what happens on the inside of us that drives what comes out of us. And that's why I'm touching on these intangibles, because these I believe, are intangibles, internal shifts that we can all make that I believe can have a seismic shift and things that come out of us. Because if my outlook is right, how my outlook is shapes what I do and how I approach what I do. So if my outlook is, this is an honor, this is a privilege, this is my service unto the Lord, this is my way of building the church that I call home, this is how I play my part as a kingdom person. If that's my outlook about what I do, and I want to get better at that, then guess how it affects what I do. I come with joy. I come with my best self. I don't just slide into it. I don't just mope into it. I don't just show up late. I come early. I'm enthusiastic. I'm energetic. I'm bringing my very best. I'm not throwing at my volunteering or my leadership or the things I've been tasked with my sloppy seconds. What's my outlook? The second is this. What's my attitude? What's my attitude? Am I excitable? Am I positive? Am I expectant? Am I really coming with faith? Am I believing that God can do what he said he would do, that God would work in and through me? What's my attitude? Because my attitude determines my beatitude. You know that old saying. These are all similar in the same vein. Number 3, my willingness. How willing am I? Again, what's the 1% shift in my willingness? Some of us drew pretty hard lines, pretty strong boundaries about what we were willing to do and what we're not willing to do. Well, if we want to see our church continue to move forward, we want to see a significant shift happen across the breadth of our church, or even the breadth of our lives, then what's the 1% we're willing to move forward and grow in when it comes to our willingness? Things I wasn't willing to do before because I was still thinking about self, still thinking selfishly, still thinking about my past, to now going, well, if I want to move us forward, I think the part I can play, and the 1% is to change my willingness. Am I willing to say yes to things that I was not before? Am I willing to do a little more than I was doing before? Am I willing to take on the jobs that aren't the pretty ones or the ones that I want to do? Am I willing to lay down my preference for the greater good? Am I willing to change my speech to protect our culture? Am I willing to change my willingness? You get the point. The next one is personal leadership. It comes back to that whole idea of, am I willing to get better? Am I willing to get bigger? My own personal leadership. What am I doing to grow me for the sake of our team? Again, let me put this way, I was going to say I find it easy. It's not easy. It's hard enough as it is to get better and bigger for myself. Because again, if it was easy, we'd all be doing it. We'd all be super disciplined. We'd all be the best version of ourselves. It's hard enough as it is to get better and bigger for myself. It's a whole nother animal, which is why, again, it's never the sexy stuff, but it's, again, a part of it, how much harder it is to become better and bigger for the sake of others. And that's really the next level of leadership I'm calling us to. And I think that'll separate us. That now will be beginning to breathe the rare air. We can start to think not just about getting bigger and bigger for self and to become personally disciplined and lead myself personally for me, but to get deeper into personal leadership and deeper into personal growth and development for the sake of others. How do I grow myself for the sake of the team? Here's an interesting thing. What if perhaps you see a gap in our church and you go, it's not my gifting, it's not even my passion, but it's a gap. And I'm gonna grow myself in that area so I can fill that gap. Oh, I tell you what, imagine what could happen. Imagine what our church could look like. Imagine what could be accomplished through our ministry and how much God could do through us if we all thought that way. And I'm not saying this just out of conjecture. I've had to do this to grow as a leader and to see our church move forward. I've had to do this. I've had to learn things I never imagined I'd have to learn. And it's not just because I lead this church, but because I want to embody the values I pray would just be displayed across the breadth of our church. How much am I willing to grow my personal leadership for the benefit of other people in the greater mission? Speaks to discipline. What's the 1% change I can make when it comes to my disciplines? Timeliness. I'll say this. Yes, I'm going to come for the throats in the church. Discipline is in stopping tardy. So what's the 1%? Well, I'm going to commit that I'm not going to be late to church. I'm going to commit that I'm going to do what I said I would do with due diligence, with the very best of my act, with excellence. So, and again, discipline. I even take that personally. What is discipline in your own Bible reading? Discipline in your own prayer life? Discipline in your own walk with the Lord? Because again, when each of us continue to grow closer to God and grow in our walk with the Lord, when you put that together, imagine how powerful our corporate gathering becomes when everyone comes and they've committed to getting better in their own walk with the Lord. Ownership. That's the last one, ownership. What's 1%? What's the 1% tweak I can make in terms of ownership? Ownership of the vision, ownership of the mission, ownership of every detail, ownership of the whole, ownership of the areas I've been entrusted to. It's not just something I've been given, but something that I'm taking ownership of. This is the questions I have for us. These areas: outlook, attitude, willingness, personal leadership, discipline, and ownership. What would it look like if we all got better at these things by 1%? Here's what I want to say. Each week, each month, each year, that 1% accumulates over time, and suddenly we become a completely different team, a completely different church. And that applies to you personally. Each week, each month, each year, all those little changes you keep making, those 1% accumulate over time, and suddenly you become a different person. Each week, each year, each month, that 1% accumulates, and you become a better leader, a better employee, a better coach, a better person, a better husband, a better wife, a better teammate. What are the small changes that we can make that can change everything? The small things that change everything. Well, that's a thought for today. Just food for thought for us. Nothing crazy, nothing long, but I wanted to challenge today on taking a good look on the inside, a good look at all the areas that we're in, all the things that we've been trusted to, and going, what are the small things that I can do that change everything? Fight for the fine margins. Your 1%, your 10th, your inch. Hope that was helpful. Hope that encouraged you and spoke to you. I don't know who is still on or left over, but if there's any thoughts, any things you want to add, contribute to the conversation. Again, this is why we're changing this model going forward. We would unpack some things here and hopefully be more dialogue, but the last few seconds we have, tell me what you thought of that, any things you'd add. I see it also good from Marissa. Great, thank you, good to hear it's good. Lonnie just said very much. I'm not sure what very much means. I'm assuming you're saying you enjoy that very much, or you were challenged very much, or you have very much to say. Don't know what that all means, but let me know. Let me know maybe one thing from one person or two about what might have spoken to you about that message today. All right, well, I'm keeping an eye on the chat here. Doesn't look much coming in.
There's a lag.
I'm aware that's so I'm just watching the chat. I always want to give a few moments. Again, this is why I'm so desperate for us to get back in person, do these in person, because we can dialogue and it's a lot more conversation, but I'd never want to just rush past things. So if there is nothing else to add, hope that was helpful. Love you all, and I will see you. Anyone who is with us, wants to join in, we will, oh, there he goes, makes the areas in my life easier to attack, because if it's only 1%, it makes it more realistic to grow. Yeah, there it's very good. That's it, Lonnie. That's exactly it. It does. I find also for those of you who procrastinate, who have been habitual procrastinators, oftentimes it's because sometimes you can feel like it's just too big of a mountain to climb at once. So if you just break it into chunks, one thing at a time, we can take a little. Challenge me, Marissa. I have room to grow and be better each day, but studying is the first thing. That's it. And that's the thing. When you just tackle the 1%, that one small change, small things that change everything, it'll help us all begin. It's great. Good. Well, I'm glad that was helpful, guys. We'll see you tomorrow for Bible study. Wednesdays in the Word. We'll continue on that. Otherwise, Stay tuned about all things coming up as we begin renovation plans in the building. Love you all. See you next time.